they expected a better future. Has this government been able to fulfill the promises they made to the public during the campaign stage? Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Where does the present government stand today? What is expected from them? What will happen in the next few days? To discuss these matters and more, we have with us two special guests. One is the Deputy Minister of Tourism and Sports, Vasantha Siranayake. A very good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening.
And also Sri Lanka Freedom Party parliamentarian, Faisal Mustafa. A very good evening and welcome to the show, Mr. Mustafa.
Good evening.
I have my journalists from News First, Sonali Wanigabalge, onto my immediate left, and onto my far left is Nadir Majid. Good evening and welcome, guys, to the show. Starting off, we start off with the Deputy Minister. Deputy Minister, are you satisfied the way in which this government has progressed since the 8th of January 2015?
Well, we have to start from the point that the previous regime had as its leader President Mahinda Rajapaksa, who was a tremendously charismatic figure, who still is a charismatic figure to a lot of the nation. He was a leader who's achieved much, solved the war during his time. A lot of progress happened in the country during his time, and therefore a change was thought almost impossible when he was in government. But the change was nevertheless brought. Now, why was the change brought? Because there was huge feeling among the people of this country that they required change for certain reasons. Even though the credit of the war should always be given, and I've always maintained this to President Rajapaksa, winning the war, beyond that, there was a need for good governance. There was a need for democratic values to be adhered to again. There was a need for constitutional reform. I think those were the crying needs which were continuously neglected. Also, the rule of a few was what I think the people were rebelling against. Now, when these matters were brought to the notice of the people in power at the time, I personally brought it to their notice over and over again. It wasn't considered very serious. Constitutional reform was not high on the agenda. However, that became the rallying point, a national rallying point for the opposition. And it was a rallying point on the opposition platform, which I was the first of. I was the first person to defect to the opposition, as it were. Pfizer, a few moments later, a few days later, a few weeks later, he joined us. And there was this huge national cry that the country required change. It required transparency, good governance, and so on. And once this government came into power, I think people expected huge changes overnight. But what good governance entails is proof along with it. You don't convict a person without proof. You can't just hang a person. Work is now happening according to procedure. It is following strict rules and regulations. So sometimes the work you require in the country doesn't happen immediately, as it were. But things are progressing. The 19th Amendment, I think, has been a huge victory. It has curbed what people used to refer to as JRG Gatte in Sinhalese, the knot that President Jayawardena tied, which could never be untied. For the first time, presidential powers, particularly arbitrary powers held by the president, have been checked now. The term limits have been defined. The cabinet has been reduced to a constitutionally fixed amount, and so on. Now, these are all good things that have happened. These are things that have happened that will protect democracy. Also, the president's right to arbitrarily dissolve parliament. Now, all these things happened under this president, which is a significant achievement because previous presidents have consolidated their power and their position within the country and their parties rather than given up their powers into the hands of parliament. So I would say we are heading towards the right direction and we've taken a step in the right direction, but am I fully satisfied? No. I think there's a lot more we can do.
Our viewers could also log on to our Facebook page, that is Face the Nation on MTV Sports, and direct your queries to Deputy Minister Vasantha Siranayake and also SLFP parliamentarian Faisal Mustafa. Mr. Mustafa, you supported the president during campaigning. You crossed over from the Sri Lanka Freedom Party and said, I will support President Maithripala Sirisena's cause to run for presidency. President Maithripala Sirisena was elected as the president of the country on the 8th of January. You were given a state ministerial portfolio. Several weeks later, you resigned from this post. Is this because you are discontent with the way in which this government is moving forward?
No, Shamir, everything is relative. President Mahinda Rajapaksa, he administered the country, he won the war, but there were a lot of issues with regard to good governance, transparency and many other issues. It was because of President Maithripala Sirisena that I opted to cross, because I believe that he could do a lot for the country and we need actual change. Therefore, I supported President Maithripala Sirisena, but I did not expect any post or position. I was offered State Minister of Aviation. I believe being a State Minister will not serve a purpose because there was a Cabinet Minister subsequently put above me. And I am yet part of government. I did not cross over because I yet believe in President Maithripala Sirisena. Because if you look at the 19th Amendment, the 18th Amendment killed democracy. So through the 19th Amendment, the Constitutional Council came in, the term limit of the President was for 2 terms. President Maithripala's also Parliament was reduced to 5 years, the Presidency was reduced to 5 years. So many changes took place which is required for democracy. So if somebody asks me, I think the greatest achievement which we have achieved under the tenure of this government is the 19th Amendment. And in fact, President Maithripala Sirisena agreed to hand over power more than what he was required, because I was part of the SLAP delegation. And I asked him, sir, why do you want to hand over power when this consequent to the Supreme Court judgment? He said, this is a pledge I made to the people, and absolute power which was with the hands of the President created a lot of issues. We saw that during the tenure of President Mahinda Rajapaksa, during President J.R. Jayawardena, President Premadasa. So we need to have actual democracy, and I think there can be shortcomings, but it's a vision of President, and yet I think people believe in President Maithripala Sirisena, because even the appointment of the Prime Minister, Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe, it is all due to President Maithripala Sirisena. He told the SLFP, I gave a pledge to the people to appoint Honorable Ranil Wickremesinghe as the Prime Minister, even though the UNP has only 40 members. The Sri Lankan Freedom Party, due to President Maithripala Sirisena, agreed to do so. So answering your question, whether I am satisfied, there are shortcomings, there are issues, but there is actual constitutional change, and also if the 20th Amendment also comes into being, because the present electoral system creates a lot of issues, because there is no elected MP for a particular electorate, and with the PR system, throwing of money is required to win a seat. So I believe if we can bring in the 20th Amendment as well, the 19th and the 20th Amendment alone is a success story of this government.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mustafa. He is the Sri Lanka Freedom Party parliamentarian. Nadim, Sonali? George.
Yes. Do you mind if I start, sir?
Sure.
Thank you. Deputy Minister Vasantha Senanayake, you were talking about good governance and how this government, both of you were mentioning, this government, the current regime, has managed to ensure good governance to a certain extent through the 19th Amendment. However, I have a problem with that statement as to whether good governance has been established even to a certain extent. Because as of recently as yesterday, we saw in the case of the Colombo Outer Ring Road Expressway, where it was said that the cost had been reduced in negotiation with the company, but documents obtained from the committee that was appointed by the Minister of Highways show that there has been no reduction in cost. 66.68 billion, it's still 66.68 billion, and what is being built is actually a lot smaller than what was initially planned under the previous regime, the previous cabinet in 2013. Also, we can see that local government authorities have become dysfunctional. So, let alone good governance, do you feel that there is any governance at all?
Yes, of course, I take your point. However, I wish to point out that what is meant by good governance, and what I meant by good governance primarily was bringing to place accountability, which wasn't there for, I don't know, since when, and since when did we have accountability in this country? So I think introducing a concept of accountability where politicians in particular are taken to account are a very good thing, but that doesn't particularly mean that I endorse every single person who's been taken in and for what charge, because some of the charges at present I think levied against certain people seem a little frivolous. However, the mere fact that politicians for the first time in history can be held accountable for their actions, ministers, former ministers, I think is a very good thing, because I think that practice did not exist in this country before. Of course, you can point to particular incidents where every government will go wrong, and you can point to maybe the example you showed. There will be incidents like that, and I don't think you can have a foolproof system where everything goes off hunky-dory and everything is 100%. However, the fact that a system of accountability has been initiated and put in place, I think is a very good thing. I think the fact that the commissions are going to finally be independent, fairly independent at least, I think is going to be also a good thing, because the fact that lots of the fact that the council, the Constitutional Council has been initiated in the 19th Amendment is a very good thing. Because
on the matter, sorry to interrupt you, sir. On the matter of the Constitutional Council, the Constitutional Council has not yet been appointed. The 19th Amendment was adopted several weeks ago. The Speaker has signed it. It is now law, but
it is underway.
Yeah, the Constitutional Council is. We haven't really seen any movement on that. Who are going to be the members?
Yes, exactly. It's an ongoing situation.
Speaker signed it only about a week back.
Yeah.
So there's to be consensus between the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition. So I'm sure with time we'll have the Constitutional Council.
Yeah, that is happening. There is no way that that's not going to happen. So that is what I was trying to say, that it's good governance starts with accountability, and accountability is very firmly installed.
Deputy Minister, just to interrupt you for a second there, you said a frivolous action is being taken. It seems
no. What I said
taken.
is, I think some of the charges, I think what the country is expecting is to see ex-minister having $10 billion in some account, $10 million or $5 million or whatever, or that ex-minister who had, I'm just making up figures here, 200,000 rupees in his bank account when he came to power now has 85 million rupees, or that you can prove that he's taken a commission off the highway and therefore he's enriched himself. However, when you bring in allegations like misuse of vehicles, it sounds to me to be a little light.
So it seems there is political revenge taking place in Sri
I don't know whether it is political revenge or whether it is going for the easiest.
You are part of this government. You are a deputy minister of this present cabinet.
Yes, but I'm not in the investigative process, so I can't really claim why actions are being brought against certain people and for what reason. But what I would say is, it looks to me as though, without going through lengthy investigations and finding big fraud, corrupt deals, they're going for the easiest possible channel to get to some person, which I don't quite endorse.
Sonali?
Yes, Mr. Senanayake, now in your opening remarks you said that things are progressing, the current government. Now it is said that the passage of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution has gone against constitutional first principles, in that there was no consultation with the general public, and to date...
Sorry, no consultation with the general public?
No consultation with the general public. There was no public forum, there was no consultation with the general public.
Did I say
To date...
Sorry, did I say that?
No, you said that things are progressing.
Yes. Okay.
So it is widely believed that the 19th Amendment to the Constitution has gone against the constitutional first principles, to the effect that there was no consultation with the general public. To date, a copy of the 19th Amendment is not available to the public. How is the 20th Amendment to the Constitution
Sonali,
going
I have
to be
to correct
different?
you there, Sonali. The blueprint is available. If anyone wants to get a blueprint, they could go to Parliament and get this particular blueprint in question. So I think you need to rephrase that question. to the Deputy
It
Minister?
is not available in the public
I'll
domain.
take your point. It is not easily accessible.
Precisely.
It is accessible,
It is accessible,
but
but
it is not
it is not
easily
easily
accessible, perhaps. Okay, that is perhaps correct. And I do actually share your view on the point that when going for constitutional reform, more consensus and more listening to the public should be necessary. I would even say listening to parliamentarians is necessary. I was the first person, I was the first person to put my set of principles for constitutional reform to the Parliamentary Select Committee 3 years ago. I was the very first parliamentarian to make a constitution for Sri Lanka and put it before the Parliamentary Select Committee. Do you know when they made this 19th Amendment, they didn't even bother to consult me. However, they've managed to put in the 30 cabinet, which I was the first to espouse, by the way, and that was actually in my constitution. But that found its way to this constitution. I'm glad about that. However, they didn't even ask the parliamentarians who had submitted views on constitutional reform to be part of the committee, even to ask their views, really. So I think the hurry really was to try to do everything in this 100 days, and I think it was ridiculous for these people to make this pledge to do everything in 100 days when the people of this country didn't require it. It was ridiculous, actually, to impose on themselves these 100 days. And then they rushed everything through just in order to keep their promises, and I think to an extent they've done a fair job, but they could have gone further. For instance, secretaries to ministries are still appointed politically, which could have not been so. It could have been done differently.
Mr. Mustafa, Sri Lanka Freedom Party, the head of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party is the President Maithripala Sirisena. Ridiculous to bring in the 100 days. It was self-imposed action. Your thoughts, agreed or disagreed?
Yeah, practically these issues could not be done within the 100 days. That's why the JHU took a different stand. So there is a dispute there itself within parties who supported President Maithripala Sirisena, whether it's 100 days or whether it's not. But in my view, the 19th Amendment, it was hurriedly brought, but it was challenged in the Supreme Court. Anybody could go to the Supreme Court. There is a process. That is the process which one has to adopt. You can, at the bill stage, you could go to the Supreme Court and challenge it, saying it's unconstitutional. That's where some of us went to court, where originally the Prime Minister was the head of the cabinet. And President Maithripala Sirisena was not even a member of the cabinet. When he was the executive president elected by the people, we were going back to 1972, making President Maithripala the ceremonial president. And the Supreme Court held that he has to be the head of the cabinet and be a member of the cabinet. So there was a major change in the original bill and what happened subsequently. And the Sri Lankan Freedom Party championed that cause. Because the issue here is it was not the abolition of the executive president. It was pruning the powers of the president. But then when you make him the
arbitrary powers of the
arbitrary powers of the president, but when you make him a ceremonial president by way of the 19th Amendment, that's what was challenged in the Supreme Court. And then consequent to that, there was a dialogue between the UNP and the SLFP. I was part of the SLFP team. And then at one point, the Sri Lankan Freedom Party said this is unconstitutional, because this is not what the Supreme Court said. But His Excellency the President, since he was the President, took the view that no, he exceeded even the Supreme Court judgment and was willing to hand over power in the 19th Amendment.
The Sri Lanka Freedom Party, is it split?
Sri Lankan Freedom, we have one leader, it's President Maithripala Sirisena. But there is a lot of speculation and there are a lot of parties or interested parties in splitting us. I believe we are yet the strongest single party.
However, several ministers, we saw State Minister Dilan Pereira stepping out of the government.
They very clearly issued a
yesterday.
statement that they have stepped out, but they are yet supportive of President Maithripala Sirisena.
They are not supporting anyone else.
No, they are not. I mean, I support President Maithripala Sirisena. I'm yet a member of this government only because of President Maithripala Sirisena. I don't belong to the United National Party, and we yet believe President Maithripala Sirisena brought up this where he appointed ministers from all parties. We respect his view and we believe that we should support his cause.
Do you believe there is a national government?
At this point of time, there is a national government because there are ministers from all parties. So then
Does that make a national government in parliament?
it
There is no
does.
common cause, obviously.
I mean, the
It
common
seems
cause
like
is the 100-day program, which the Sri Lankan Freedom Party also endorsed. But we believe that the 20th Amendment also should be part of that cause.
We saw a national government really coming into play in England between 1940 and 1945, that is during Winston Churchill's era, where they wanted to defeat the Germans. We saw a national government
That's during
there,
a war.
During the war. Do we have a national government?
We have a national government. We have a national government because we are members of parliament from different parties. And the
I think
opposition and the
what
government.
Samir is trying to ask as well is, do we have cause to have
is
the
the
national
common cause?
government and to continue with the national government? I mean, the example that Samir is giving is of a world war.
Can I
when
put it
England
to
divided.
put it to you in this sense? We have President Maithripala Sirisena was the General Secretary of the Sri Lankan Freedom Party. He contested as the opposition candidate. He won. And now he is the President of the Sri Lankan Freedom Party. It's a unique situation. So he has to balance all interests. But to get the support for the 19th Amendment and for this government to continue, you need the support of the Sri Lankan Freedom Party. And we support this government because President Maithripala Sirisena is the head of the government. Otherwise, we all would have been in opposition. It's a unique situation. So you cannot draw a parallel between any other country. Even the situation during the World War is different from this, because President Maithripala Sirisena contested as the common opposition candidate, and he got the support of all, and he got the mandate with the support of all parties. So he has a vision and mission. Originally it was restricted for 100 days, but we are keen that electoral reforms is necessary, and we believe with electoral reforms being completed, then the 100-day program has come to an end, and thereafter we can go back to our original camp, and we could contest the election as as the UMP could contest with their election pledge, and we could contest with ours.
But now, you all are both members of parliament. The 100-day program, does it end with electoral, the 100 days over, but does it end with electoral reforms? I mean there's still standing orders of parliament have not been amended. The right to information bill is missing. So those are all pledges that were supposed to be accomplished very early in the 100-day program.
Code of conduct.
Code of conduct.
Example.
Where is the progress on those matters?
Well, the right to information has been ensured in the Constitution to start off with. So I think...
but the bill, I think they said, the Honourable Prime Minister said you bring it in the next Parliament, because this Parliament took away urgent bills. That's a pledge given by President Maithripala Sirisena, no more urgent bills.
Okay, what about the amending of standing orders of Parliament in order to make Parliament more proactive and effective?
I hope it will be done. It can be done, but from the point of from being a member of the Sri Lankan Freedom Party, there are bigger issues like the 20th Amendment, like electoral reforms. But I believe with electoral, I think Parliament would have been dissolved earlier if not for the 20th Amendment.
I understand Professor Vijay Singha himself was working on standing orders. That has been one of his pet subjects for a while.
For a very long time, even under the previous government. And one of his complaints has been that I keep working on it, but it seems that no one else is interested on progressing on this.
No, I don't think it's fair to say nobody else is interested. I think there are people who are interested, but it is just that this situation is a bit of a unique situation where there's a lot of tension. You need to get everybody together. You need to get everyone on the same page. There are so many people holding diverse views. So even to get the 19th Amendment through, it was a job and a half. It wasn't something that was achieved very easily. But I think it can be achieved. What it shows is this government has been able to bring people with very diverse views onto one page, onto one common thinking, and that's what the 19th Amendment really showed. Let's hope the 20th is the same, and let's hope things follow in that direction.
We are in discussion with the Deputy Minister of Tourism and Sports, Vasantha Senanayake, and Sri Lanka Freedom Party parliamentarian, Mr. Faisal Mustafa. We're going for a short commercial break. Just a reminder to our viewers, you could log on to our Facebook page, that is Face the Nation on MTV Sports, and direct your questions to the two parliamentarians as well. So we're going for a short commercial break. Stay connected, stay with us. We will be right back.